Triumph. And I asked Winter to be my guest tonight because she's an amazing woman who has blossomed over the years, and she has not gotten to this place without some bumps in the road. Some major things have occurred in your life, Winter.
Yeah.
And to look at you now, you would never know what you've been through. You certainly don't look like what you've been through. And I just wanted you to talk transparently about your your real life trauma, and talk to people about what are the things that got you through? What are the things that made you feel like you have to keep going? You have to continue living and prospering in life. Because you didn't just continue living. You started, I mean, look at you now. Look at Winter Harris, and a singer. You are on a major network. You are a boss entrepreneur. You are a socialite. You are a mom. Like, you know what I mean? And
Right.
to know some of the things that you've gone through, I really believe your story can help and touch others. And so without further ado, I'm introducing her on her own live. You all, welcome Winter Harris to Trauma to Triumph tonight. Hi, Winter.
Hi, Terry. So, technical difficulties happen, but we're going to make it work regardless.
Yes.
And so thank you for asking me to be a part of your live. You do this series every Tuesday. So if you guys are following me and you don't follow Terry, make sure you go follow Trauma to Triumph, because she does this every week.
Yes.
She also co-hosts another show that's in the city, but this is her baby that she's growing. So go support it and go spread the word. If you know any incredible individuals who have a Trauma to Triumph story, reach out to her.
Please
refer
do.
them. But most importantly, make sure you support. So I want to say that first. I love Terry. Terry and I definitely just clicked when we met. Sometimes you meet people and that's just what it is. Terry is one of those people for me. I'm like, we family for life. It's just what it is.
Yes, we are.
What it is. But I do appreciate everything you said. Hey, Jen. I do appreciate everything that you said. And it's true. I don't feel like any story that's worth telling is without struggle and trouble and ups and downs. It's just honestly a part of life. And so for me, a lot of my strength comes from my faith. I don't hide that. I was born and raised in the church. My parents were pastors. And so my life was very sheltered growing up. But I will say my experience with being born and raised in the church and dealing with church people will teach you, honestly, that this world can be cruel. Just because it has on a long skirt and black pantyhose and white pumps and a doily on top of their head does not mean that they will not chew you up and spit you out. So I learned,
they'll be the first to do it sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. And I appreciate that, naturally speechy. So a lot of you who have known me for years know that I'm a strong woman of faith. Like, I don't play about my prayer life. You know, people may see me on TV, but that has not changed. I still believe in the power of prayer. I pray every day. I read my word every day. I don't care if it's one scripture, it's what I do. But I just still strongly believe that my faith is really the glue that has held my sanity together. The old people used to say, I'm grateful to be in my right mind.
Yes.
And you don't understand how powerful that statement is until your right mind has been challenged.
Until you're not in your right mind.
Exactly. And so I'm grateful for that. And my faith has been the glue that has enabled me to remain in my right mind. But I will say my first encounter with trauma happened when I was about 13 years old. So when I was 5, I started participating in pageants. And I learned at 5 I could sing. People ask me, how long have I been singing? I've been singing since I was 5 years old. And at 5 years old, my little bitty self was leading the Sunshine Band. And I was always known as the little girl with the big voice. And so I started singing at 5. I was not too bad looking on the eyes. So my mom combined that talent and my looks and put me in pageants. And so singing was my talent. I went through all the training. And when I was about 13 years old, I started competing in the Miss America pageant circuit. And that circuit is very tough. They do not play. You do train very hard. I went through all the etiquette classes and the posture classes and the, learning how to walk. And I enjoyed pageants. I really loved it. It was a passion of mine. I saw myself being Miss America one day. Honestly, when I was about 12 years old, Debbie Turner won Miss America. And it was the first time a Black woman had won since Vanessa Williams. And if you recall,
You're exactly right.
Yes, Vanessa Williams had her crown stripped because she posed naked in some photos.
That's right.
And so by default, Debbie Turner actually became the first Black woman Miss America, even though technically Vanessa was, but she didn't hold her title. And so Debbie Turner was from my hometown. She was born and raised in Jonesboro, Arkansas.
Really?
Absolutely.
Wow.
And when I say that was such a big deal for me as a little girl, my dad actually knew her mom. Her mom actually led my dad to Christ. And so when Debbie won and came home, my dad took me over her mom's house to meet her in person. And I remember her signing like my little, I had a photo of her. And so she signed it. So I still have that photo. She signed the photo for me.
Are you serious?
Yes. And so it just motivated me to keep going in pageants. All that to say, when I was 13, this is about a year later, I competed in a pageant and I did my talent. I was so proud of it. I went outside to take a break. My mom was helping me change my outfit. And an older Black lady came out because, again, there's not a whole lot of African Americans that compete in the Miss America circuit. It's not exactly fair. If that's a great way to say that. It's not.
I get it.
It's not diverse at all. So I remember this older Black lady coming out to my mom and she said, she's a really beautiful girl. Mind you, I'm 13 years old. She's not talking to me. She's talking to my mom, but I can hear her.
You can hear her.
She's a really beautiful girl and she has a beautiful voice, but she is not going to go far in this circuit if she does not lose weight.
Really?
I'm so serious.
Were you chubby?
I was 13. I was not chubby at all. I weighed I wasn't even 100 pounds. I was 90 pounds at the time.
Like, who says that about a kid?
I don't even know that I was 90. I was barely 90, maybe 90, but I was 13. Now, what I will say is that I was curvy because I had started to mature. I'm 13. I just got my cycle. So, I'm getting my chest in, my curves, but I'm not fat. I'm not chubby. I'm just becoming curvy because I'm turning into a young woman. And so she said if she doesn't drop weight, she's not going to go far. She's going to have to drop at least 10 to 20 pounds.
So how did that make you feel?
So as a 13-year-old overhearing her say that, I developed an eating disorder. From that day forward, I stopped eating. Literally.
See, so pause right there for those of you all who are listening. You just never know the damage that you can cause to a child.
Absolutely.
By making those types of statements. Even if you were a little bit chubby, that's still inappropriate to say, because you just don't know the mental impact that will have on a child. Absolutely. You stopped eating.
I stopped eating. From that day forward, I stopped eating. And so I went from about 90 pounds to about 70. It took my mom a little bit to realize that I wasn't really eating that much. And she would just be like, you're not eating today. Why are you not, eating? I'm like, no, I've ate, I would lie, do the typical things you would do. But they eventually figured out I developed a full-blown eating disorder. And they had no idea that it was because of what I overheard at 13.
Wow.
From this older lady. And so I struggled with that clear up until adulthood. Like, it was something that I constantly battled. And even to this day, I make a conscious decision not to judge myself too harshly.
Darn. I'm just sitting here like, wow. You and you carried that for so long.
Oh, absolutely. Because in the back of my, it was almost like her voice was programmed in the back of my mind
Right.
from that point forward. And
Right.
so it made me always very self-conscious about my weight. Always. And
Wow.
so that's just what it was. I did not overcome that until I became, I think I was about 35 maybe years old.
Wow,
It's
Winter.
it's only been about the 7 years. And like I said, I still, it's a choice. I make a choice not to judge myself harshly. It's hard because that was my life from 13 years on. And
So
so
did you stay competing though? Did you
I
continue
did.
on that quest?
I continued on and I competed all the way through college.
Okay.
And so it wasn't something I discontinued. I just became a perfectionist and, very critical and intentional about my weight. So that was the first trauma I really ever had to overcome.
I like what
Um,
someone said just now. Words have power. I said
absolutely.
this before. I think before you joined, before the live went out, that what we speak is very we have to watch what we say, and I
Mhm.
mean that positively and negatively. Like we speak life, and if we speak life, we can manifest things that you wouldn't even imagine for ourselves.
Yes,
But it works the flip side as well. When you speak the wrong things, it can really be detrimental.
absolutely. So I'm very mindful of I'm very mindful of that at all times. Like
Yeah.
our words have more power than we would ever know.
Yeah.
Um, so it took me a long time to overcome that. That was my first incident. When I was
Mhm.
19, being a typical PK, and I do say typical because we know the connotation that comes with that,
Yes,
being
we do.
usually deemed as the baddest ones. Now, I will admit, if my mom was on here, she'd be like, now, Winter, I was a handful. I was always the mouthy one. I challenged every boundary, every rule, because I needed to understand why we could not do certain things. And I was willing to test the limits.
So you
And so,
tested those boundaries.
oh, absolutely. I got my last spanking Terry when I was 16 years old.
You got tore up at 16.
16, and I deserved every bit of it. And I'm going to tell you, because it was foolish. I snuck out the house and my dad caught me. Literally ridiculous. And he didn't play no games. Like my dad was very strict, but
Okay.
Winter was a tester. And so you better believe when I turned 18 and got out of my parents' house and moved 4.5 hours away to college, I was about to get my entire life.
Your entire life, okay?
Entire life. And I did. I partied hard. I ended up meeting the kid's dad my sophomore year in college and partied a little too hard.
Okay.
And our oldest daughter was conceived.
Uh-huh. When you were in college.
When I was in college, I was
Okay.
19 years old, found out I was pregnant. And let me tell you, to have to call home
I was
and
just about to ask you that. How traumatic was that? To just be like, now how the hell I'm gonna tell how I'm gonna tell them this?
woo, when I tell you the anxiety, I mean, I have never been so scared in my life because I'm just like, I don't think people get it.
I do. And
I
my daddy wasn't a preacher. My daddy was just a strict father who instilled certain things in us. So when I wasn't 19, but I got pregnant at 22 and I was in college. And so I dropped out. But I couldn't tell my father that I was pregnant until I got married. So I said to the boy at the time, we got to get married before I tell my parents,
Mm,
because I can't tell them that I'm pregnant unless I say, but by the way,
I'm
I'm
married.
also getting married. It was a
Hmm.
mess. So I get it.
Yes, I was like, this is, they are gonna kill me. Like, and
Right.
I didn't grow up in a large town, so I'm like, everybody's gonna know. It was just a lot.
It was a
I
lot.
I ended up telling my parents. They were very supportive, by the way. They did not
Really?
respond. Yes, they did not respond how I had anticipated. In fact, my mom was like, okay, Winter, you need to pack up and come home so we can help you. Your support system is here. I remember my dad, because I was a daddy's girl, and he called me and he said, Wink, he said, I'm not happy to hear it. He said, but I love you anyway, and you can always come home.
And how did that make you feel in that moment?
Like
Relieved?
I was relieved, but weirdly, Terry, it lit a fire in me to prove to them that I was going to make this right.
Yep. That
That
you were
this
going to.
was not going to set me back. It wasn't going to ruin my dreams. It wasn't going to deter me from getting my education. So I said, I appreciate you guys' support, but I'm going to stay in school and I'm going to figure it out.
Yes. You've always been a badass. And I
I've
mean that in a good way.
always had to, I don't know, I'm a person that skips to the beat of my own drum, but I own who I am, but I also own my mistakes. And I feel like and I don't consider my daughter a mistake, but like that was not the plan. Long story short, their dad and I made a decision to get married.
Okay.
So we married when I was about 7 months pregnant with my daughter. And we started our life together. I had her about 2 months after we got married. And
you stayed in college?
I stayed in school.
Okay.
Stayed in school, not for long though. We could not figure out birth control, Terry, and it's just young and dumb. And I know y'all gonna look at me like I'm crazy, but it's true. We could not master it. The pill did not work for me, and I tried it. But anyway, long story short, your girl ended up pregnant when my little one was 6 months old.
Listen, okay. So you got a 6-month-old and you're pregnant again in college still.
Yep. 20 years old. I got a 6-month-old, pregnant again, in school. And I was so nervous to tell my parents that I was pregnant again, that I honestly was like, I don't know if we should have this baby. Mm-hmm. I'm being so transparent right now. Like, I'm like, I don't know if this is the best decision. And I called my parents and they were like, girl, you married now. We don't care. You can have 20 of them back to back. That's y'all business.
You married now.
You married now,
Be
right?
fruitful.
Be fruitful. And that's as long as y'all can figure it out. Be fruitful. And so that gave me peace. And we decided to continue on. You remember the little glucose test when you're pregnant? They make you drink that nasty orange stuff.
Nasty orange stuff.
So fast forward, I was about 7, maybe almost 8 months pregnant, and I go into the doctor's office to do this glucose test. It's so disgusting. If you've never been pregnant, you're not going to look forward to it. They have not improved. Nothing. It's still nasty. So I go in to do my glucose test, and she said, you know what, while you're here, let's go ahead and listen to the baby's heartbeat. And at this point, I knew that I was having another girl. Mm-hmm. And so I had already chosen her name. Her name was going to be Autumn, because I don't know why in the world I decided to name Kayla, just Kayla. I could have went with, her name is Kayla Sky. So I could have went with Summer Sky. Yeah. Summer Sky would have been amazing though.
Oh, that's pretty. Summer Sky.
But I didn't think that way. So I went with Kayla. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I'm going to name this daughter a Season. So we decided to name her Autumn.
Autumn.
So we go into this exam room to hear my baby's heartbeat. And I went by myself. I dropped Kayla off at the sitter. Their dad was in school still, so he was at practice. And I just ran to the doctor's office right quick because it shouldn't have been that long. So I go in, lay on the counter. She gets her Doppler out. Jelly all over the stomach. And she just keeps trying to,
find the heartbeat.
And she was like, oh, she's hiding today. I'm going to send you over to another ultrasound and I'll bring you right back. I said, okay, no problems. Walk down the hallway, go.
How far along are you now? Just
8 months.
8 months.
Yep. 8 months old. 8 months pregnant. So we go down the hallway and do the other ultrasound. She doesn't say anything. She says, okay, you can go back and the doctor will discuss, the ultrasound with you. And I said, okay, no problem.
So
Go back to
pause. After that, did you
Mhm.
start feeling anything weird or any feelings of nervousness? Nothing. You were just like, okay,
Yeah. Okay.
okay.
Smiling the whole time, Terry. I mean, literally, pearly whites. Okay, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I go back to the doctor's office. I sit down. My nurse practitioner comes in. And when I tell you all the blood had drained from her face, and she says, Winter, can you call your husband? And I was like, yeah, sure. She said, the doctor's going to come in here. She's like, I'm going to stay in here until he gets back, but he's going to come in here right quick. I said, okay, no problem. So the doctor came in and he said, Mrs. Harris, I'm sorry to tell you we're going to have to admit you. And I said, for what? And he said, well, you're going to have a baby today, but not the way that you think, because we literally cannot find a heartbeat. And I don't know. I'm going to be honest, Terry. My smile never left my face.
Really?
I think I was in shock. It never left my face. And she says, is there someone you can call? And I was like, yes, ma'am. Like, I'll call him. And I did. I got on my phone. I called him. I called Kayla's sitter at the time to tell her that my sister will be picking her up. And she said, is your husband on his way? I said, yes, ma'am, he is. She said, okay, I'm going to walk you upstairs to the, OB unit, get you registered and checked in. And she was like, we'll have to induce you to get you started. And I said, okay, no problem. And she said, why are you still smiling? And I said, I don't know. I said, it'll be okay. And she said, I don't think you understand. And I said, I think I do. She was like, you do understand, like, you have to have her, but you don't get to go home with her. And I said, yes, ma'am, I understand. But honestly, Terry, I was literally in shock. So I got checked in. He finally got there. They induced me. And I believe in natural childbirth, so I don't believe in any medication. I didn't have any when I had Kayla. And so I didn't want to have any with Autumn. And so if you know anything about Pitocin, those contractions are way worse than natural
Oh,
contractions because
yes,
they are
indeed.
trying to mimic. And so I think I was about, I don't know, 3 or 4 centimeters dilated, not that far along, but the contractions were really, really bad. And so I remember like being kind of like bowed over in pain. And I heard our doctor tell my husband at the time, he said, I need you to talk to her. I need you to talk to her, and I need you to please see if you can get her to take an epidural, because she doesn't get anything out of this. And I, in my mind, felt like I at least owed this to her. I don't know the rationale behind that, but I just felt like I could be strong enough not to take it. But he did. He begged me to take it, and I finally relented and got the epidural. And I would say about 3 or 4 hours later, I gave birth to her. So I can explain this because you're a mom. So when you push, you automatically close your eyes. It's just a natural reflex.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't very big, so I only had to push once, and she was delivered. But I remember the kid's dad just like screaming, like he was done. I knew by his response not to open my eyes. And I kept my eyes closed until they finished. And I told the nurse, I said, please let me know when you guys are done.
So you knew before you delivered Autumn
Mm-hmm.
that you were delivering a baby that wasn't going to live?
Mm-hmm.
And you understood that?
Mm-hmm.
And you were okay? I mean, like, I'm just trying to understand, like, how was it just, I don't get, like, as a mom, I'm I'm trying to process that right now. Like,
I don't think you are okay. I think I can only speak for myself, Terry. What I know in that moment is that I felt like I needed to be strong for her. Who else was going to be strong for her but me? And I think that's like the most powerful thing about being a mom. We love our kids when we know we are pregnant with them. From the moment that we can hear a heartbeat, we are connected. So I felt like I owed it to her to be strong enough to make sure that she made it through to this side. And if that meant not taking an epidural, whatever rationale I tried to make in my mind up until the point I took one, that's what I was going to do. Because that was still my baby.
mm, 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 mm.
And so I remember the grief nurse coming in immediately afterwards, and she said, Winter, we encourage all of our patients to spend time with their babies. I looked at that nurse. I said, I can't do it. And she said, no, I really think you should. A lot of our patients feel better. I said, nope. I said, I got to go home and take care of a 6-month-old. I got to be sane. And if I do that, I'm not going to be okay. And if I don't get to take her home, I can't spend that. Like for me, I can't do it. So she came in one more time. My mom and sister, like they all drove up from Arkansas, not from Arkansas, but from another place in Arkansas. It took them about 4.5 hours. But by the time they got there, I had just had her. So, they pronounced her. They gave her death date, pronounced her, covered her up. And I remember them wheeling her out. And I heard my mom and sister crying. And so.
So you never held her?
No, I couldn't do it. It's
Did
nothing
you look? Did you look at her?
Couldn't do it.
Oh,
Couldn't
did
do
your
it.
husband?
Mm-hmm.
He did.
Mm-hmm.
So he's able to say what she looked like.
So we had everything that you would have with a normal baby. I mean, she was a full baby. She's 1 pound, 14 ounces.
Yeah,
And
eight months. That's almost full. That's
right. 1 pound, 14 ounces. So we got we took home. I still have all this stuff, which is just bananas to me. We got a lock of her hair. I got her footprints, her fingerprints, her gown, her band, all the things. It was nothing different. She just didn't make it. And so I just remember their dad he was just screaming. And at the moment, I literally I couldn't process him and it just was too much going on. And so they said, we're going to do an autopsy, but that'll be some weeks before you get the results back. We're going to keep you here for observation for a couple of days. The grief nurse is going to come back in here and explain the process to you. And I said, well, what process? And they said, well, you have to bury her. So you need to make arrangements.
oh.
And I said,
That's a lot.
I said, I gotta bury her. They say, yeah, you gotta go to the funeral home. You gotta bury her. So the kid's dad actually was an NCAA athlete at this time. And a lot of people don't know this, but it was very uncommon for players to be married in college. We were actually one of the first.
Yeah.
And they did not know how to really handle their players having a family. But what I will say, and I'll speak to the SEC because they were responsible for this. His head coach at the time literally made a phone call to the SEC, explained the situation, and they contacted us and said, tell us how much it is. We'll cover everything.
Wow.
And so when I say our coaches, the coaching staff at the time, the wives, I became really close to the coaches' wives at the time. when I say they made sure Kayla was covered, they took care of her. They made sure our family got up here. Both of my grandmothers, who are now deceased, bless their heart, my grandmothers were in their 70s. They both made a 4.5-hour car ride to make sure that they were there to support me and our family. I was still very much traumatized from the experience, but in my mind, I was still her mom. And very strange, but going through therapy afterwards, I know it's a trauma response, and a lot of moms do this when they lose a child. Nobody else was going to plan that funeral but me. So that means I sat in a hospital 24 hours after having her, calling funeral homes, calling flower shops, calling the places that made headstones to make my appointments so that 24 hours after I got discharged, I could go to these places and pick out her casket. I could go and pick out her headstone. I picked out her flowers. My pastor's wife at the time said, Winter, are you sure you don't want somebody else to do this? Like, I don't think you should be handling this. And I said, I'm good. Like, I'll figure it out. But nobody else is going to plan this funeral for her but me. So I picked out her clothes. She actually is buried in a gown that my aunt made for Kayla. My aunt crochets, and she crocheted a gown for Kayla when she was a baby. So I actually buried Autumn in that gown. And her casket, it was beautiful. It had a dove on the top of it, but it was no bigger than a man's, I say like a man's size 12 shoebox. It was tiny.
Right.
I held it together, Terry, until the funeral. And I think that was as much as my mind could mentally like handle. And I was so determined to be strong for her as her mom. It wasn't until I saw at the end of the service, as every funeral concludes, you got to wheel the casket out. Her dad carried her casket and put her in the back of the funeral car. That for me is when I lost it.
Oh, man.
And I, walking her to the back of the funeral hearse, I just wailed. I don't think I ever will be able to explain that type of pain to anyone. I'm like,
I can't imagine. I just can't. I cannot imagine.
Yeah.
What that feels like.
It was rough. I was not well from that point forward. And my mom stayed with us for a while. I started grief therapy. But like putting her in the ground, it was just a lot.
Yeah.
And that situation changed me. It changed me and her dad. I was 21 years old. Oh, man. I cannot imagine my 21-year-old processing something of that magnitude. So when we talk about trauma, it was just insane. So it made me view life differently. Like, life is very short, but life is very precious. So when people look at me and they say, oh my gosh, you have 4 kids? I will never, ever regret or downplay the gift that it is to bring life into this world and to be able to see that life grow up, because I've been on the opposite end and know the pain of what it's like to never know. And so she would have been 21 on November 2nd. I posted about her. I have a friend of mine that keeps her site and sends me photos. I don't look at her baby album. I actually did, like, I used to scrapbook a lot, so I did a scrapbook for her. I don't look at it often because what your mind does, even though I've seen her pictures before, her pictures aren't great because of when they took them. So I don't look at them often. And I've actually redone what she looks like in my mind. So when I see them, it just, ugh, it's just not pleasant. But the the triumph of it all is that I was fortunate enough many moons later to be able to be a advocate for stillbirth, infant loss, miscarriages, and work with the National March of Dimes. I've been a part of National March of Dimes campaigns, but that opportunity afforded me the blessing of being able to minister to other moms that have been through what I've been through.